I am the owner and CEO of Wyvern Security. I'm also a professor in which I teach cybersecurity, network security, cryptography, and forensics. The topics that will be discussed today is cybersecurity and the hacking paradigm. This presentation is an introduction to cybersecurity and the hacking paradigm as it relates to education. I chose this topic because of the many questions I have received in regards to cybersecurity programs. When it comes to cybersecurity programs, it is important to conduct research for universities to determine if that university is the right fit for you and what you are hoping to obtain. It is important to look at what the university offers as well as their overall score, which can be found on various websites. As we have seen in the news, many universities have closed down due to funding issues, unethical practices, fraud, embezzlement, and visa fraud scams, just to name a few. Some universities are being listed as diploma mills on various websites. A diploma mill is an institution that grants large numbers of educational degrees based on inadequate or inferior education and assessments of those recipients. So make sure that when you're researching universities that you do your due diligence to make sure you're enrolling into an excellent school that focuses on cybersecurity. You also want to make sure that the university is accredited as well. There are many websites out there that you can go and check to make sure that the university that you are selecting actually offers what you're looking for and what you hope to aim in your cybersecurity degree. The topics that we will go over are: what is cybersecurity? What is a hacker? And what are the elements? We'll also go over the hacker methodology. How does this relate to education? How do we include the hacker mindset within programs? What is the importance? How can we make cybersecurity programs better? What is meant by the theoretical and practical knowledge? How does this increase the success of a cybersecurity program for cybersecurity professionals? And what should be some of the requirements of a cybersecurity program? Before we begin, let's take a look at some of the most recent statistics. The IBM report published in 2018 noted that the average data breach cost was $3.86 million. This was an increase of 6.4%. The average cost per stolen record was $148. This is an increase of 4.8%. The likelihood of another breach over the next 2 years was 27.9%. The data breach live index showed that social media accounted for 56.18% of data breaches, in which 55.24% was malicious. Since 2013, there has been over 14 billion records stolen, and only 4% of those were secured with encryption, which rendered the data useless. Every day, there are over 6 million records stolen and over 267,000 every hour. This is why cybersecurity is so important. We have a growing demand for cybersecurity professionals. We also have a growing demand for better cybersecurity programs. So if we look at the numbers here from the last IBM report from July of 2018, it was noted that there was 48% of malicious attacks which caused data breaches. One of the most recent data breaches, if we go back within the past 30 days, is the one where 3 sites for the FBI National Academy was actually breached. Several of the FBI affiliated websites as well, and they uploaded contents to the web, including dozens of files containing the personal information of thousands of federal agents as well as law enforcement. If we look at Facebook, over 540 million Facebook interaction records was left exposed by third parties using Amazon's cloud services. Hackers actually obtained millions of credit card data using Planet Hollywood's parent company. If we look at ASUS, they pushed malware that gave hackers a backdoor access to thousands of computers. The hackers actually managed to compromise one of the company's servers that they actually used to provide software updates to all the ASUS machines. If we look at the Oregon Department of Human Services, There was roughly 2 million emails with protected health information from more than 350,000 customers that was potentially exposed after non-employees' mailboxes were compromised within a spear phishing attack. They're actually noting it was around 2 million emails that were compromised. If we look at the Kibana SQL rat, over 100 companies was impacted in the United States alone, with many victims in the catering, gaming, and hospitality industries. The hackers were believed to have stolen at least 15 million U.S. credit card records from over 6,500 point-of-sale terminals within thousands of locations. If we were to look at Citrix, foreign hackers actually compromised their internal network, swiping their business documents within an apparent password spraying attack, which allowed them to guess weak passwords and then use that early foothold that they created in order to launch more extensive attacks. So we turn around and we look at the other statistics we have here. We have system glitches. So when it comes to system glitches, they listed it at 25%. This could be fixed within organizations if they had better policies in place, better policies for updates and patches, what should be going on within it, what should be allowed within systems as well, permissions. So if we look at the human error, which is listed at 27%, this could be easily fixed. Well, it won't be fixed 100%, but the numbers would drop a lot if they actually provide employee security training. When it comes to employee training, for example, they should go over complex passwords, explain to them why it is so important to have these types of passwords, how often it should be changed, as well as to trying to get them to understand the importance, as well as letting them know that you can use things such as special software for passwords managers for your more complex passwords. Explaining a little bit about two-factor authentication, explain to them about network connection as well. For example, using Bluetooth, they should avoid it as much as possible because it has been proven to be the easiest to break. Access to their devices, they shouldn't just allow any and everyone to have access to their devices, even down to their spouses or children, because typically they'll download, especially kids, they'll download anything and click on whatever link without actually considering the consequences of those actions. Explaining to them about physical security as well. Like, for example, mobile devices should never be left in a car. Explain to them reasons for data encryption, as well as backup and how often it should be done, as well as software installation and patching, as well as best security hygiene. Employees should install antivirus software, for example, enabling updates as well. They should understand the firewalls on their computer systems, why it's turned on. Explaining to them the reason why they shouldn't click on links within emails. Be very careful of this. Also about surfing the internet on suspicious websites and transferring data. So these are the few things that companies should include whenever they're going over their security training for their employees. And as a cybersecurity professional, these are things that should also be included within programs to get students to better understand the reasons why these measures have to be taken. So it makes it easier for them whenever they're out in the field and have to provide this type of training to employees within their organization. Now that we went over a little bit of the basics, let's begin to explain cybersecurity. What is cybersecurity and the importance of it? What is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity refers to the body of technologies and processes and practices that are designed to protect networks, devices, programs, and data from attack, damage, or unauthorized access. So why is cybersecurity important? Each day we all use technologies, create processes and practices that are supposed to protect data and prevent unauthorized access. Cybersecurity is important because organizations, government, military, medical organizations, universities all collect, process, and store unprecedented amounts of data on devices and computers. A significant amount of this data is sensitive information, such as intellectual property, personally identifiable information, financial data, and medical information. This data is transmitted across networks. Cybersecurity is a discipline that is dedicated to protecting this information and the systems that are used to process or store it. As the volume of cyber attacks increase, so does the sophistication of each attack. So now let's take a look at the elements of cybersecurity. So when we have network security is going to be the practice of protecting a network from unauthorized access and ensuring integrity. This includes both the hardware and software technologies. Most networking attacks are often done using scripts or network software that has been determined to be able to crack the surface of a particular type of attack. The scripts are created in a way to manipulate data passing through the network connection to obtain more information about how the target system works. A lot of scripts can be easily found on the internet. There are some websites that contain thousands of scripts based on the nature of the type of attack you are interested in. They also have hackers that will create scripts based on your specifications. More advanced hackers study and modify scripts to develop new methods. One way to look at this is if you are a computer science major, for example. As you learn how to code, you get more of the idea of how to take various snippets of written code and to require libraries to get that code to perform and execute to provide the results you're looking for. The next element is application security. So this is the measures that are used to protect the security of applications within an organization. Regardless of whether the application was bought or built by an organization's IT staff, there are still measures that should be taken. Applications can contain holes or vulnerabilities, which enables attackers to infiltrate a network. Some of these threats when it comes to applications are buffer overflows, SQL injection, modifying an application's runtime behavior so that it can perform unauthorized actions, escalation of privileges, which we will discuss shortly. There's also a header manipulation, session hijacking, to name a few. This is the reason that secure coding is so important. Secure coding helps to guard against introduction of vulnerabilities and detect bugs. Consider the attack surface. These are what is available to the hacker to be used against a product. For example, if it was raining outside, really pouring down, you would want to cover yourself as much as possible to prevent yourself from getting soaked. The same can be said for applications. It is important to reduce the attack surface as much as possible because the greater the attack surface, the more avenues that are available to a hacker. So when it comes to data security, this means protecting data from unauthorized access and/or data corruption throughout its life cycle. So what are some of the ways to protect data? We can use encryption, access management, making sure that those who have access has a need to know, ensure access is only limited to those that should have access, and access control mechanisms should be default to no access. Know, protect, and understand the most important data needs to be protected. Understand your assets and their value. Require stronger passwords, regular data backups, and ensure that you have policies in place. So next we will look at cloud security. This is the protection of data, applications, and infrastructure within cloud computing. So when we look at the cloud, this consists of your policies, controls, procedures, and technologies that are going to work together in order to protect cloud-based systems. They are configured to protect data, support regulatory compliance, and protect the customer's privacy. So some of the most recent issues with cloud are going to be your misconfigurations of databases or storage mechanisms, which will in turn require minimum or no authentication to access. Another issue is software bugs, which causes data to be stored in a different format or in an unintended location. For example, Twitter disclosed that their passwords have been stored in a plain text file in an internal log. So when this happens, organizations always try to reassure their consumers that there is no evidence of data compromise, but at the end of the day, they do not know for sure. When it comes to endpoint security, this is where we are trying to protect the networks when they are being accessed remotely. So when we're referring to this, we're talking about your laptops, wireless, and mobile devices. Hackers often deliver malware by email in order to bypass the endpoint security. So you can bypass endpoint security by social engineering using a product ID or vendor ID with the USB that is allowed for connections, and then you inject backdoors and extract that information. So next up is database and infrastructure. Database security is collective measures that are used to protect and secure a database or database management software from unauthorized access and malicious threats and attacks. So this can include the processes, tools, and methodologies that are used to ensure security within a database environment. This includes the software, physical controls, and administration controls that are used. Hackers often test these measures that are put into place by trying different combinations within a login screen, by manipulating a URL, or injecting SQL statements at the end of the URL. When it comes to infrastructure, we are ensuring the security of the network, communications, the servers, the databases, and IT. The idea is to limit vulnerabilities within these structures. Next, we'll be discussing mobile security. So this is where you're protecting devices from malware threats, reducing the risk, and securing mobile devices and their data in case of theft, unauthorized access, or accidental loss of the mobile device. So one of the main concerns is how to protect that data that is stored on those devices. There's lots of material available out there to hack phones and intercept communications. So identity management is where we are determining the best ways to identify, authenticate, and authorize users to access applications, systems, and networks. Disaster recovery and business continuity planning. There's lots of companies that often ignore these policies and are often the ones that aren't able to open their doors after an attack or event. End user education is very important because they have to understand how the organization can be attacked and what happens in the event of an attack. They should have an understanding of phishing, social engineering, access passwords and connections to each, device security, as well as physical security. You're probably wondering, why am I going over the elements of cybersecurity? How is one to understand the underlying pieces if they only understand one area? You have to look at each piece of the pie to get the full understanding of how a hacker will infiltrate an organization. You don't have to be a subject matter expert in all areas, but you do need to have an understanding. By understanding each area, it makes it easier for you in the workforce to gain employment as well. In order for us to be a step ahead of a hacker, you have to have an idea of how to think like one. So a hacker is a person that uses a computer, hardware, software, and/or technologies in order to gain unauthorized access to systems or networks. So here we have the elements of a hacker. Motive, opportunity, and means. MOM. So when it comes to the motive, we have the internal, the external, money, excitement, challenge, and then there's also the adrenaline rush. So if a hacker has enough motive and method, no system is invulnerable, even if the opportunity is almost zero. A combination of motive and method can still be too high for an attack to be withstood. When it comes to motive, most people are motivated by money. There's a financial gain for stealing information, either directly, for example, or stealing credit card numbers, or in a more roundabout way, like, for example, stealing personal information. There has been recent trends that have showed that hackers are increasingly focused on breaching information systems that holds identity data. Breaching data yields a greater return for identity data. Some hackers do it for the fame and glory. Some do it for the challenge or the rush. Sometimes the challenge makes it that much more worthwhile. At the end of the day, if you spend enough time doing recon on a target, there's bound to be a vulnerability that can be used. Once you find that vulnerability, you follow the hacker methodology steps to gain full access. The issue is that there are many sites out there that I have used recently that don't have their sites properly locked down. For example, there was one site that I used in which their code appeared on the front page as I logged out. This is the type of information that makes it so easy for someone to easily go in and attack their systems. The information that appeared was their database code. When it comes to opportunity, this is your vulnerabilities and your weaknesses. Organizations will always have to consider the risk based on security of their downstream providers, such as your third-party business services. If a hacker cannot walk directly in the front door, why not leverage the weakened security posture of that target and then use this information to gain greater access or information that will finally help you to breach that target organization. So when hackers are accessing their target, it is critical to find vulnerabilities and weaknesses within their systems. Sometimes it can be the employees, where employees could be breaking security for personal gain. They could be using it to coerce their bribery or blackmail, circumventing security to make life a lot easier. unwittingly lured by punishing or either other cyber fraud, management of staff inefficiency, and failure to learn lessons. So when it comes to the means, there is little in the way of means or resources that can be done to prevent a cybercrime. Once a hacker develops sophisticated coding methods, they are able to cause all sorts of attacks. The most common types of attacks are going to be your punishing, man in the middle, your backdoor, 0-day, and key logging. For those that are new to the art of hacking, there are pre-made scripts that are available. These types of hackers are your typical script kiddies. They don't have enough knowledge to code, but with the right tools, they can hack a system in a matter of seconds. So when I look at MOM, I consider each element. But the opportunity and the means is where cybersecurity professionals need to understand the underlying pieces. When you consider the opportunity and the means, these are the areas that must be taught within cybersecurity programs. Students must understand what is a vulnerability, what are the weaknesses, what makes them a vulnerability or a weakness. Where can you find this information? One place you would be able to check would be the common vulnerabilities and exposures by MITRE. Other sites that can be used is going to be the National Vulnerability Database, the Exploit Database, Security Tracker, also the HackerStorm Vulnerability Research Tool, HackerWatch, and Security Focus, to name a few. Universities must include these areas within their cybersecurity programs to ensure that professionals are ready to enter the market upon graduation. In this next section, we're going to be discussing the hacker methodology. So the first area that we're going to look at is going to be reconnaissance. In this area, this is where we gather as much information as we can about our target. We're going to be looking at information that might give us additional insight within the organization. No details are too big or too small. You want to gain as much information as possible. So you're going to be looking at the high-level architecture, for example, what routers they are using or servers, as well as the applications. Typically, you can find this information within job descriptions. They always post this in order to, give the person that is looking for opportunities more ways to understand what the company is actually looking for in that individual. So in looking at this information for the applications, the servers, and hardware, also checking out the websites, it gives an attacker a better idea of what is being used. And this way, once you find out what is being used, this gives you some avenues that you'll be able to take in order to infiltrate that organization. You also want to determine whether or not there are physical barriers. What type of physical measures are they using? You want to look up information that you can find out about their employees as well. One thing I've learned is that sometimes when you're out and about, employees are so free to tell you as much information as possible about organizations. And this goes back to the user training that should be provided, end user training that should be provided to all employees. This is a great way to gain an additional edge over an organization. So next we're going to look at the different gathering techniques. We have the passive, and then there's also active. So passive was where we're going to be actually touching devices or that network for that target. Whereas passive, we're actually going to be gathering information without communicating with the actual machines. This will be gathering information, for example, through social media or public websites. Anything that you can find online is really great in order to kind of give you a better idea of your target. Some of the active reconnaissance measures that has been used in the past, or in the future as well, has been calling the help desk or doing daily routines, doing port scans and checking for flaws in order to produce errors, because the errors that's produced whenever you're doing this can actually give you some avenues that you can actually take. It'll show you little pieces, or cookies as I like to call it, that you can use in order to attack your target. Another avenue that you can use whenever you're doing recon is you can do DNS footprinting. Some of the tools that can be used is going to be Whois or NSLookup. Often you can find the technical staff information, the contact, the administrative contact as well, which will provide you with some information that you can use in order to contact them and ask them additional information. This information, every little bit that you get, can give you some additional insight into the organization overall. So the next section is scanning and enumeration. So here we're going to be looking for the ports. We're going to be scanning for ports looking to see what is open. We're going to look for live systems as well as the services that are running on that host. We're going to do vulnerability scanning, looking for target for weaknesses or vulnerabilities that can be exploited. We're also going to do network mapping. We're going to look for the topology of the network, the routers and the firewalls and the servers. We're going to look for any host information that we can find as well. Drawing of the network diagram if that is possible. So we want to identify the operating system and the services. Do banner grabbing as well as OS fingerprint to tell us what operating system is going to be used on those machines. This also goes back to the information I was referring to earlier about what is listed inside of a job description, because that is a gold mine for hackers. Following these steps will give us the results we need. It will give us the list of all the machines that are on that network, the operating systems and the devices, as well as a system administrator to contact, and the policies, management, and administration of those systems as well. So in the next phase is going to be gaining access. So in this phase, you're going to use your network attacks to conduct sniffing, spoofing. You're going to do session hijacking as well, even man-in-the-middle attacks. You want to do your host attacks as well, your buffer overflow or SQL injection, or you can do mobile attacks as well for penetration and malware. Once you are able to gain access, next you want to escalate your privileges. You can dump the SAM file. You can retrieve passwords from the password file as well, or you can use Kali, Armitage, Metinterpreter, or an emulator. So the image you see on the side here is actually Armitage, or you can utilize DLL preloading. So in the next phase, you're going to be maintaining access. And this area is where you want to create your backdoors. You can use spyware. You can also hide files within rootkits, so you can do stenography. You can execute applications with spyware trojans as well. And once this is done, you want to make sure that you hide all your evidence. Now, how do you do this? You want to delete logs, disable auditing, and you want to be able to manipulate those logs, because the last thing you want is for someone to know that you are actually there. So in the beginning, you all recall me discussing the hacker mentality. So far, we discussed the motive, opportunity, and means, which is MOM, the hacker methodology. So far, we understand the why and the how. The hacker methodology provides you with the steps that can be used to carry out an attack. If you look at the underlying pieces of cybersecurity and how these pieces map to the hacker methodology, this helps to secure an organization. It is important to not just know the material, but also have the hands-on experience, which we will discuss shortly. So next, we're going to be discussing theoretical versus practical knowledge. Theoretical knowledge gives you the why. It provides you with an understanding and reasoning. It builds the context, the logic reasoning, as well as helps to set the strategy. So the way to think about it is it helps you to understand why one technique works where another one fails. It shows you everything. It builds the context. It helps you to set that strategy, where it's concerned with theory that prepares you to set a direction for your future. Theory teaches you through experience of others. So when you think about theoretical knowledge, this can often lead to a deeper understanding of a concept by seeing that context of a greater whole and understanding the why behind it. When you're looking at the theoretical knowledge, you're also looking at like for example, reading academic papers, or this also includes the text that's going to be provided with your courses and this, that, and the other. But it helps you to gain an understanding of the ins and outs of the field based on your selected field of study. When we look at practical knowledge, this helps you to acquire the specific techniques that can become the tools of your trade. It brings you closer to the actual day-to-day work that you would be doing. It provides you with some things that you can learn through doing and experiencing. Where theory is often taught in the idea of the vacuum, the practical is learned through the reality of life. Practical knowledge can often lead to a deeper understanding of the concept through the act of doing and personal experience. Combining theory and practical, this helps you to solve a problem. It teaches you how to solve the same problem again and again. Theory helps you to apply what you've learned, solving one problem to a different problem. Most universities base their programs on theory or practical, which does not provide students with the proper skills and training that is required in the field. This makes it harder for students to land opportunities upon graduation. We have to create cybersecurity programs that enable students to be better prepared in the field of cybersecurity. This means combining both theory and practical. The combination of theory and practice means that students use several different learning methods and therefore have more avenues at their disposal to acquire and memorize new information. By mixing academic reading, interactive courses, learning through visualization, and practical projects, students are able to explore a topic through many possible perspectives. Research universities deal with the why. Universities of applied sciences focus on the how. The how prepares students to go directly into the workforce by relying on more concrete and practical courses. No matter the type of university and program format, at the end of the day, they should be able to deliver theory and practice of equal quality. Since both learning methods are so important for the learning curve of students, universities need to incorporate theoretical courses as well as practical-based learning within their curriculum. So when it comes to cybersecurity versus the hacker elements, we look at what cybersecurity is encompassed. What are those elements? The elements that we discussed was network security, application, data, cloud, and endpoint security. We also discussed database infrastructure, mobile security, identity management, disaster recovery, and end user education. So all of these pieces are pieces that are required within cyber, which even if you don't have to be a SME to understand each of these pieces, but you do need to have the understanding in order to help defend off attacks. So when it comes to the hacker elements, we have MOM, which is the motive, the opportunity, and the means. So we already discussed the motive, which could be the money, it could be fame and glory, it could be just a challenge or just the rush. So when we looked at the opportunity, this was the vulnerabilities and those weaknesses. And the means was what they would have to carry out their attack. So when we look at the hacker methodology, we went through the different phases, which was the recon, where we're gathering all the information. So when we're looking at recon, we're looking at the network, the host, the employees. We're trying to find possible information that we can use in order to attack our subject. So when we're looking at this information, we're looking at the network, the ports and services as well. When we're doing our scanning, we're looking at vulnerabilities that can be used. We're looking at the network overall. Remember, I was discussing how you can find information about the network within job descriptions. This is like a gold mine for attackers. You're going to be looking to see what they're using, for example, within the cloud. What mobile devices do they have? What mobile devices are the employees using? Are they providing end user education? Then you want to look at how you're going to gain access, and you're going to escalate those privileges. So when you escalate those privileges, if you're actually monitoring what you need to be monitoring within cyber, for each component that we discussed, when it's this encompassed for those elements, this will help you to target and pay attention more to what is coming through in your network. So you'll be able to look at how they're accessing the systems, what are they using to access the systems, what data are they really going after. Now, some companies actually put out a honeypot just so they can see what information those attackers are mainly interested in and how they can better protect them. So as we discussed before in hacker methodology, we was looking at maintaining access as well as how do you hide all your tracks. You want to make sure you clear your tracks after you've gained access, because one thing you don't want is for anyone to realize that you've actually been there, because once you access a system, you want to be able to go back. So you want to make sure that once you gained your access, you've figured out a way to, for example, you can use rootkits, create backdoors to make sure that you maintain that access. You want to clear those audit trails. You want to manipulate them so it shows that you weren't there, just to make sure that you still have access to those systems. So here we have cybersecurity programs. This is where cybersecurity programs should combine theoretical and practical. As I discussed before, a lot of universities either offer one or the other. So by combining the two, this will make programs that much better for students, which also allows them to grow and give them that knowledge they need to be successful in the field. There should be budgets for the cybersecurity program. And when I say budgets, I mean budgets that allow for the directors over these programs to enable them to be able to buy new software or new hardware, create labs that makes this program more beneficial for those students that's enrolling into these programs. It gives them more avenues and understanding of real world experiences. And that's another thing, they should offer real world experiences, because this would give them a better idea of what their actual day-to-day life would be like. What are the attacks that are really out there, and how do they determine the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses? How do they find these vulnerabilities and weaknesses, and what do they do once they find them? So it kind of prepares them more for what to expect once they get out there in the field. They should work with industry leaders as well when they're trying to create these programs, because industry leaders are the ones that see this stuff every day. So they have a better idea of what's going to be needed, what should be included in these programs, and how this can help the programs to be more successful. Allow programs to be more mapped towards the future. So you want to look at programs, you want the program to be able to grow over time. You want it to be able to, as the sophistication of attacks gets more sophisticated, you want the students to be able to understand this. You want them to be able to look at this and have a better idea of what needs to be done in order to protect organizations from this and give them a better security posture. You want to start referring to old technologies and software. There's a lot of universities that still have the old software and you're still using old technologies because they don't want to upgrade their systems. If you don't upgrade your systems and start using the newer technologies and software, how are your students supposed to learn? So when they go out into these new opportunities and try to land jobs, they look at these new technologies and software that's out there in the field and they don't understand it because they was never taught it. So rather than students having to go an extra leg to understand these new technologies and software that's out in the field, it would be better if universities would actually encompass this within their programs. Give students a chance to learn what they need to know, as well as be able to apply it to real world experiences. Allow students to think outside of the box. Generate ideas, generate courses that allow them to think of things in different ways, map it in different ways, because these are going to be the building blocks for tomorrow. Offer simulations. Have simulations for different types of labs, different types of attack labs. There's a lot of universities don't actually include this, which is very beneficial for students that are trying to get into this field. When it comes to cybersecurity programs, some additional curriculum courses should be designing and analysis of algorithms, because this would enable students to develop the skills that they need in order to create and understand how algorithms work. It's really important when it comes to computer science because this helps you to design and analyze algorithms, but I actually think it gives you a way to think about things, to solve problems that can be used with algorithms, and it gets you to look at things in a different way. So data structures can actually help you to understand the basic data and the applications as well as the processing techniques. When it comes to the principles of operating systems, this allows students to understand the operating systems and what pieces of that system is more susceptible to attacks, and then understand those processes. So computer architecture will provide students with an understanding of the rules and methods that can describe the functionality, organization, and implementation of those computer systems. Software engineering will give students the knowledge and skills to understand, to quickly learn to adapt or modify in organization-specific software development processes. So all these courses are very important for students because it gets you to think more outside of the box. At the end of the day, each one of these courses will allow students to look at cybersecurity in a different way because they have a more understanding of the underlying pieces. So in conclusion, cybersecurity is always changing, which is the reason why we must adapt to those changes, which is why we need better cybersecurity programs. Cybersecurity isn't a project. Lots of companies see it as that, which is the reason why there are more attacks today. The number of attacks is growing. Understanding the underlying concepts enhances the knowledge. And this is where I was going when I was explaining about cybersecurity and hacking and education. So we need to build better cybersecurity programs to allow our students to grow and be better able to assess the types of attacks that are occurring today. Cybersecurity programs need to provide theoretical and practical knowledge. This is where I was saying before that students need the theoretical and the practical knowledge. By combining the two, this means that students will have several different learning methods, and therefore they'll be able to look at things in multiple avenues and have it at their disposal to acquire and memorize new information. By being able to mix academic reading, interactive courses, visualization, projects, students are able to explore the topic through many possible perspectives. So they don't just have the why, they also have the how, which makes them better out there in the field of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity programs should include courses for each of the elements discussed for cybersecurity. Students should be able to understand network security as well as application. They should understand data and cloud as well as endpoint. They need to understand databases, the mobile security, and how does identity management, how is that mapped? End user education, understanding the why and how. Why is this important? As well as disaster recovery. I'm not saying that the students need to be a subject matter expert in these areas, but what I am saying is that they should have an understanding of each. So thinking like a hacker actually increases the chances of protecting organizations from attacks. Thank you to Easy Counsel University for inviting me to speak on this topic. At this time, I will be taking questions.